Good day. In this lesson, we're going to learn about adjectives. In particular, we're going to learn how we can improve our writing using adjectives. You can think about adjectives as if it's a painting that needs colors, and adjectives are the colors that brings life to make this painting extremely vivid. So, what are adjectives in particular when it comes to language? Now, an adjective is a word that modifies a noun or a pronoun. So any word that modifies a noun or a pronoun is termed as adjective. Example: Laura went to the fancy store. So the noun store is being modified by a noun, which is what kind of store. So fancy in this case is an adjective that modifies store, which is a noun. But how do we find adjectives? If you're looking at a sentence that contains a lot of adjectives or a lot of nouns, how do we find adjectives in a sentence? So some typical questions we might ask is what kind what kind of car? This is a large car, modifying car, so it gives you the kind of car. Luxurious house. So the question is, what kind of house? It's a luxurious house, therefore luxurious is your adjective. Another question you might ask to find the adjective is what kind. Another thing, what kind is which one. So example, you might say that ball. So when you ask the question of what ball, the answer would be your adjective, which is that. A third question you might ask is how many. So when you ask, let's say, how many cars, and you say 2 cars, then 2 is your adjective. 1 seat, 1 is your adjective. 5 books, therefore 5 will be adjective modifying books. And the last question you might ask to find the adjective is how much. So you might ask how much doors, you might say little doors or small doors, and so small or little might be your adjective modifies those. So now we know what adjectives are, what do they modify, and how to find them. Now the third question you might ask about adjectives is where are they located usually? Usually adjectives located are before they're usually before the noun or pronoun. But sometimes they can appear after the noun or pronoun, and sometimes they might appear after a linking verb. In this case, it's termed as predicate adjective. So let's look at the verse example, which is before the noun or pronoun. The frisky, playful cat walkers. So the cat is being modified by two adjectives, frisky and playful. The cat is playful and it's frisky. Therefore, the adjective precedes the noun it's modifying. Similarly, it can appear also after the verb, after the noun it's modifying. For example, you can say the cat, comma, frisky and playful walkers. In this case, the adjectives frisky and playful follow the noun they modify, which precedes them. In the third example, you might have the adjectives following the linking verb modifying the subject. In this example, the cat, the cat is frisky and playful. So frisky and playful, they follow a linking verb and modify the subject of the sentence. Therefore, the adjectives follow the linking verb in this case. So we have three locations for adjectives. They can be either before noun or pronoun. An example of the frisky, playful cat walkers, they can follow or come after the noun, such as the cat, frisky and playful walkers, or they can come after the linking verb. In the case of the cat, is frisky and playful. Sometimes you'll have to write two adjectives that modify a noun, and many times they might have a conjunction between them, like and or. But sometimes you don't have to add and or. So should you add a comma, or should there not be a comma between them? So let's go back to the earlier example, which is the frisky and playful cat walkers. Okay, so I'm going to write this here. The frisky and playful cat walkers. Okay, so we have these two adjectives, frisky, playful, and they're joined by and. Now sometimes you don't have to write the and here. Okay, so in this case you can replace the and with a comma. So in this case the sentence would be the frisky, playful cat walkers. Okay, if you want to test whether should you use a comma or not between the two adjectives, you can join them by and or. If they sound right, then you should use a comma. For example, if I said the playful brown cat walks is not the same as frisky playful cat, because brown is the color of the cat. Therefore, if I say the playful and brown cat, does not really work well, does not sound right in a sentence. Therefore, there should not be a comma between them. So, to test whether to have a comma between the two adjectives that modify a noun, place and or. If they sound right, they sound natural, then there should be a comma between them. If not, then don't add any comma. Sometimes the adjectives are the product of a proper noun. So, if you look at the sentence, we ate an Italian pizza in an Egyptian restaurant. And you look at the adjective, which is Italian, modifies pizza, which is derived from the word Italy, a proper noun. We call this adjective a proper adjective. Similarly, you have the word Egyptian that modifies restaurant, and we know Egyptian is derived from the proper noun Egypt. Therefore, we call Egyptian a proper adjective. And like any compound noun, compound adjectives can also be constructed. For example, you might say the turtleneck sweater. Turtleneck is a compound adjective that modifies sweater. Or the first class male is a compound adjective modifying male. Many times you would use the articles a, the, or an before any noun. For example, you might say the library is closed for the night. Okay, so in this case, the, which precedes the library, modifies library, and we call it an article. Same thing applies to night, which is the modifying night, and we call this also an article. That is a specific kind of article. We call this definite article. So this is called a definite article. The two other articles, which are a or an, that precede any noun, they're called indefinite because they don't find a specific noun. They're called indefinite articles, and these are considered also adjectives. But in many cases, when you ask to pinpoint an adjective in a paragraph, in a specific assessment, they don't typically ask you to point out the articles as well, unless they explicitly say that. But in any case, articles are adjectives. In some other cases, a word can function as adjective as well as any other part of speech. For example, you might say the name of that student is unusual. So the name here, in this case, is a noun. However, if I use name here in the sentence, the student needs a name tag, in this particular sentence, the noun here, which is named in the earlier sentence, is used as an adjective because it modifies tag. Therefore, many parts of speech, such as nouns for example, can also be used as adjectives in different sentences. All you have to do is to look at what the word it modifies, and so the function is not a noun but an adjective in the second sentence. In the lesson about pronouns, we learned about different types of pronouns. Specifically, we learned about demonstrative pronouns, we learned about interrogative pronouns, and we learned about indefinite pronouns. However, these pronouns as well, they can function as adjectives if they precede a noun. Example, in the demonstrative pronouns, if you say, instead of saying these are mine, you say these pens are mine, then in this particular sentence, these precedes a noun, which is pens. Therefore, these here is not a pronoun, but an adjective that modifies pens. So the part of speech, its part of speech is a pronoun, but its function in the sentence is an adjective. And if you're asked to find an adjective in the sentence, you should also pinpoint these, although it's a pronoun. Similarly, you can also look at interrogative pronouns as adjectives as well. If we answer the question of what answer did you give him? Similarly, here, what precedes the noun answer and modifies it. Therefore, the function of what is an adjective. Although the part of speech here, it's a pronoun, which is in this case interrogative pronoun. So the function here is an adjective, although it's interrogative pronoun as a part of speech. The same thing applies to indefinite pronouns. Again, if they're followed by a noun, then they can function as adjectives. For example, in an earlier lesson we said the sentence of some of the people are not convinced. In this particular sentence, the some here is the pronoun and also functions as a subject of the sentence as well. In this case, it's some are. But if I reframe the sentence as such with some people are not convinced, then the subject of the sentence is actually people, which is subject, that's the verb, and the some modifies people, therefore some here is an adjective. So a general rule for the pronouns here, interrogative and infinitive and demonstrative pronouns, is that if they precede a noun, then they function as adjectives. In the example of these pens, what answer, and some people. So this is a very quick lesson about adjectives. We discussed first at the beginning, let's scroll at the top, we talked about adjectives. What are they? They modify nouns or pronouns, and to find the adjectives we need to ask the question of what kind, or which one, or how many, or how much. The answer to your question will be your adjective. To find the location of the adjective, there are three places where you can find an adjective. It can be either before a noun or pronoun, it can be after the noun or pronoun, or it can be after a linking verb. In the punctuation of the pronouns of the adjectives, we said if you can add and or between the two adjectives that modify a noun, like frisky and playful, and it sounds right, then a comma is necessary in this case. If it doesn't work out and doesn't sound natural, then a comma is not necessary in the case of the two adjectives modifying a noun. And we also talked about proper adjectives. They are derived from proper nouns, such as Italy here. It can be Swiss watch, for example. That comes from the derived from the word Switzerland, or Egyptian restaurant, derived from the proper noun Egypt. Then we call these proper adjectives. And we talked about compound adjectives. It's like they are like proper nouns. They can even have a hyphen or without a hyphen, and they modify a noun. We talked about also articles, definite and indefinite articles. We said the is a definite article and it's considered as an adjective, and we said a and an are indefinite articles. And we talked about other types of parts of speech as adjectives, like a noun. A noun in a sentence can function as an adjective in another, like name tag in the second sentence. And lastly, we talked about words used as adjectives or pronouns, like the most of the pronouns. If they precede a noun, like these pens, that pen, those pens. Interrogative pronouns, like what answer, modifying answer. And indefinite pronouns, like some of the people, all of the people. In this case, this is a pronoun. But if it follows the noun, which is pronoun people, then it functions as adjective. Instead of saying some people, you can say few people. You can say all people, and so on. So whenever it precedes the noun directly, then it functions as a noun, as a pronoun, adjective, sorry. So here, in these two cases, it functions as an adjective.